Bolivian President Evo Morales condemns an ongoing coup d'etat against his democratically re-elected government. Brazil's former president Lula da Silva addresses the country on his first day out of jail. And at least 6 people have been injured and a dozen got detained as yellow vest protests flare up again in France. Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo. This is From the South. Bolivian President Evo Morales has condemned what he calls an ongoing coup d'etat against his democratically re-elected government.
I want to inform the Bolivian people and the whole world what the press already know, that a coup d'etat is underway. A coup d'etat against the government that was democratically elected with more than 60% of votes in the last elections. This is a coup d'etat against social movements, workers, a coup d'etat against patriotic professionals, the humble, the indigenous, against all of us who have brought a democratically led revolution. It's a coup d'etat by violent groups, by anti-democratic groups that don't respect democracy. They don't respect the results of the last national election, and above all, they don't respect social change. I ask the patriots, I ask the social movements, the workers, I ask the people who historically brought back democracy, the miners, the factory workers, the campesinos, the bishops. I ask all these people to mobilize and defend the democracy, to defend the country, but above all, to defend life, to defend the vote of the Bolivian people. I asked for a peaceful mobilization so that people will respect democracy.
This comes as some police units in 3 Bolivian cities have abandoned their posts and sided with the anti-government protesters. In a statement, Bolivia's Foreign Affairs Ministry heavily condemned the situation, saying that these police units abandoned their constitutional role of ensuring the safety of society and state institutions. The ministry also rejected the statements made by Santa Cruz opposition leader Fernando Camacho, in which he calls for the disruption of the constitutional order, calls on the military and police forces to abandon the government and demand the resignation of President Evo Morales. Bolivia's Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, Williams Calimán, has addressed the current situation in the country.
The armed forces will guarantee the union between citizens and will never confront our people. We'll always guarantee peace among citizens and the development of our country. The current problems need to be solved with the people's interests in our mind before it comes to an irreversible situation.
Our correspondent Freddy Morales in La Paz has the latest on the situation. Freddy.
I am here at the Morillo Square, the political center of Bolivia. But today is virtually empty because the police have decided to abandon their post this morning, half a block away from here. The move is part of the police strategy to pressure the government for better social benefits and salaries. Meanwhile, President Evo Morales expressed concern for the latest development regarding the country's political situation. He warned the nation of a coup d'etat that is underway against democracy, against his government, which has democratically been elected with a majority in the last elections. President Morales has also called on social movements to defend the social revolution that is made possible with the nationalization of oil and gas reserves, a process that he has been leading for the past 13 years. President Morales has also called on for an urgent meeting with the political parties that won seats in Congress in the October 20 election to reach an agreement so that peace can return to Bolivia. The country has been rocked by opposition-led demonstrations for the past 2 weeks now, with an aim to delegitimize the election's results. Runoff presidential candidate Carlos Mesa was the first to answer to the presidential call for dialogue, saying that the time for dialogue has already passed and President Morales has to make a decision now.
Moving on, Brazil leftist former President Luis Inácio Lula da Silva walked out from prison as a free man on Friday after a judge ordered his release. This Saturday, he spoke to the country at an event celebrating his release organized by the Metal Workers Union in the outskirts of Sao Paulo.
During the 580 days I spent in jail, I prepared myself spiritually to not feel hatred, neither a thirst for revenge, to not hate. Why did I prepare myself? Because I was still in prison by then, but I am still sleeping with a much clearer conscience than then.
And after his release, Lula also sent a video message to Argentina's president-elect Alberto Fernandez to thank him and other leftist regional leaders for their support. Fernandez was attending the so-called Puebla group, attended by more than 30 regional leaders in Buenos Aires, that seeks to propose alternative policies to neoliberalism.
I wanted to tell you that I am finally free, that I am with much will to fight. One of the objectives of my life is to build a strong Latin America regional integration. I still have the dream to build a great Latin America. I still believe it is possible to improve the lives of the people of Argentina, Brazil, Uruguay, Paraguay, if only people have respect for the poor, give them work, and redistribute income. I believe Alberto Fernandez can do that in Argentina and can serve as an example for other countries.
Lula also spoke about the current Bolsonaro government.
Various colleagues that are here with me have said that the situation is really hard. Some of them have even said that it's necessary for Bolsonaro to resign. They talk about impeachment, but he was elected democratically and we accepted the results of that election. He has a 4-year mandate. Now he was elected to govern the people of Brazil and not the military of Rio de Janeiro.
The resignation of Colombia's defense minister earlier this week after it was revealed he had lied about a military operation that killed 8 children and adolescents has shaken the country. Many argue that a fundamental revision of military policy is needed.
There have been many reactions in Colombia to the resignation of the defense minister Guillermo Botero. He was already facing a censure motion because of his ineffectiveness and failure to contain the increased violence. Then it emerged that he had concealed the murder of 8 minors in a bombardment of an alleged dissident camp. In his place, the current command of the armed forces was appointed as acting Minister of Defense.
What the president must ensure is a military leadership that guarantees respect for international humanitarian law and human rights. That is the priority. So all of this points to the need for an in-depth review in this sector.
Human rights organizations and social movements say the minister's resignation is not enough. They want the investigations to go further, to include members of the security forces and even the president himself, who authorized and then praised the bombing. They are concerned that the belligerent policy of this government will continue.
The policy of military intervention will continue and be further exacerbated in strategic areas, in Cauca, in Arauca, in the north of Santander, in Chocó, in part of the valley, in the central Magdalena region. They want to consolidate military control along the strategic economic corridors, where there are mining and energy interests, as well as drug trafficking interests. All this will continue exactly the same.
The minister has never acknowledged the errors of his administration. Analysts say that what is needed is a change in domestic military policy, which is again focusing on anti-insurgency operations and the abolition of extrajudicial executions.
The central problem is the military doctrine and the logic with which military action is developed in Colombia. In Colombia, we still have police doing the job of the military, and the military doing the job of the police. We continue thinking that the problem is the same as that of the Cold War. We continue to depend on the U.S. manuals of military doctrine. As long as we follow this logic, a few cosmetic changes may have some symbolic value, but we need a fundamental debate on military criminal justice and military doctrine.
In the meantime, violence in the country is increasing and conflicts are spreading. Recently, another murder of an indigenous leader took place in Sinu, in the municipality of Cáceres, Antioquia, where paramilitaries have decreed a curfew for campesinos and indigenous people, meaning they cannot travel their usual routes through the Bajo Cauca without fear of being killed.
Coming up after the break, complaints of political persecution by the state are increasing in Ecuador. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Complaints of political persecution by the state against citizens, indigenous leaders, and opposition politicians are increasing in Ecuador. This comes after October's massive popular protests against the government of President Lenín Moreno. Let's have a look.
The Pichincha Provincial Court ordered the preventive detention of one of the main leaders of the Citizen Revolution Party, Virgilio Hernández. He's been accused of the alleged crime of rebellion during the national strike. The prosecutor's office says that the evidence presented, which includes phone conversations, cash, and flags of a number of social movements, is enough proof against Hernández.
They are looking for vengeance. They want to silence us for being the opposition. That's why we come here with our strength, with conviction, knowing full well we are innocent and we are being persecuted for being the opposition.
Indigenous leaders have denounced they're being persecuted as well. Leonidas Issa, the president of Cotopaxi's Indigenous and Campesino movement and one of the main figures from October's protest, has said he's being accused of the alleged kidnapping of police officers inside Quito's main cultural center.
They had not handed over the body of our brother Inocencio Tucumbi. The police officers were not kidnapped. We just wanted them to see what the government had been doing to us. They are trying to use anything against us to intimidate us.
For his part, the president of the Quichua People's Confederation of Ecuador, Ecuarunari, rejected the role of the government during the protests.
When the people reacted in this way and took to the streets out of necessity, that is when the government started violating human rights.
On top of the persecution, there's a case known as the 9 from Sucumbíos. It involves the detention of 9 people in the Amazonian province of Sucumbíos, including 3 lawmakers and the prefect, for allegedly stopping public services in a water pumping station.
These are good people. We know they have no criminal precedents. They haven't done anything illegal. They are just like any other protesters who marched to oppose Decree 883.
Over the next few days, international bodies that have been looking into the human rights violations committed during October's protest will provide a report on their findings.
In the Caribbean, Guyana's opposition leader Bara Jagdeo is accusing the interim government of trying to disenfranchise voters as the nation prepares for general elections on March 2nd of 2020.
It's evident to Guyanese from the dishonesty about the no confidence motion to going to the court to the dishonesty from the president when he keeps making excuses that the constitutional language is not clear, to their refusal to accept the ruling of the court, and even now their dishonest acts at GCOM to try to disenfranchise Guyanese. That is what the only group of dishonest people in terms of rigging elections are those who sit at Congress Place. They sit there and plot how to disenfranchise people or to create trouble with the elections.
Jamaica has found itself in the middle of a row between China and the U.S. All this as Prime Minister Andrew Holmes is in China on a 9-day working visit. Earlier this week, a U.S. military official in Jamaica said China does not share a commitment to democracy and the rule of law that the U.S. shares with the island. The Chinese embassy in Jamaica has responded, describing the comment as irresponsible and defamatory. It said its relationship with Jamaica and other countries in the Caribbean has been on the basis of mutual respect and win-win cooperation. The government of Barbados is working on legislation to allow Rastafarians to legally use cannabis for sacramental purposes. The announcement was made during a sitting in the House of Parliament this week by Attorney General Dale Marshall during the debate on the Medical Cannabis Bill 2019.
For us to continue to prohibit that would be to continue to breach their fundamental constitutional rights, sir. And not just rights guaranteed by the Barbados Constitution, but rights guaranteed by the International Convention on Civil.
Now to Europe. Spain will hold general elections on Sunday with a high number of undecided voters. Our correspondent Adriana Cardoso has an update.
Greetings from Madrid. The 4 general elections will be taking place tomorrow. The official campaign finished yesterday with various events throughout the country. The Socialist Party asked Spaniards to vote for them because they say they are the only option to govern Spain. Unidas Podemos have said they are the only option for Pedro Sánchez not to settle with the parties of the right. Meanwhile, the Popular Party, through Pablo Casado, has said they are the only alternative for a Pedro Sánchez government. And the far-right party, Vox, has asked all voters from the left and the right to vote for them. Opinion polls have given them good numbers for these elections. One of the objectives of the candidates was to catch the vote of the undecided voters. According to some opinion polls, 35% of citizens are still undecided who to vote for. Tomorrow will be a big day for Spain. Back to you.
We thank Adriana for that report. Coming up after the break, a segment of the Berlin Wall makes its way to the White House. We'll tell you how after the break.
Infested by inequalities, abuse of power, and injustice, the American journalist Abby Martin covers the struggle for fundamental rights worldwide, deepening into the search of files which uncover the empire's strategies through our screen and web platform in English. The Empire Files with Abby Martin. Tuesday, only on Telesur.
Welcome back to From the South. At least 6 people have been injured and 12 detained as yellow vest demonstrations continue in France. Violence broke out when police used tear gas to disperse protesters in the streets of Montpellier just a week before the first anniversary of the beginning of the yellow vest movement. The latest protest marks 52 weeks of demonstrations since their onset on November 17th of 2018. Russia has blamed the United States for its failure to abide by arms control agreements. Speaking at a disarmament conference in Moscow, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov accused the U.S. of using arms control treaties only to boost its military. He added that the world was becoming increasingly unstable because the Donald Trump administration itself did not want to abide by arms control agreements.
Over the past few years, strategic stability has degraded. The deep crisis in this sphere is unprecedented in modern history, and it is connected, of course, to the actions of the United States, which, with the blind support of its allies, is moving towards the destruction of the architecture of the international arms control agreements.
As Germany celebrated the 30th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall, a segment of the wall has made its way to the doorsteps of U.S. President Donald Trump. Brought to Washington by the Open Society as part of its Wall Against Walls initiative, the 2.7-ton wall features a letter by the citizens of Berlin. It starts with saying, "It divided not only Berlin and Germany, but the whole world. Too many people died trying to cross it, their only crime being their desire to be free." Then it continues saying that no wall lasts forever and that the U.S. has played a major role in bringing the wall down. The Secret Service didn't let the wall to be delivered to the White House, so instead the Open Society team drove around the city with a trailer carrying it to deliver the message to U.S. citizens.
How you guys doing?
China has slammed U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo for describing the Chinese Communist Party as a threat to international peace and order. The Chinese Foreign Ministry says this was a malicious attempt by Pompeo to drive a wedge between citizens and the Communist Party.
Pompeo attempted to cut off the Chinese people from the Communist Party of China and drive a wedge between the Chinese people and the Communist Party of China. I'd like to tell him unequivocally that China's ruling party, the Communist Party of China, has over the nearly 100 years always represented and firmly safeguarded the interests of the Chinese people and has thus won profound trust and heartfelt support from the Chinese people. Attempting to cut off the Chinese people from the Communist Party of China is a provocation to the whole Chinese people, and it is bound to fail.
Indian Hindus have won a court case of a bitterly contested religious site between them and some Muslim followers. The judgment has brought to an end to India's longest religious dispute that has sparked the bloodiest riots since the country's independence. The ruling has paved the way for the construction of a Hindu temple on the site, a proposal long supported by Prime Minister Narendra Modi's ruling Hindu Nationalist Party.
I believe that the ruling of the Supreme Court is historic, and regarding this verdict, I can also say that it is a landmark judgment. Everyone should accept this.
And still in India, a historic corridor has been opened between India and Pakistan, and hundreds of Indians have managed to cross through a newly built road to one of their religious holiest sites. This follows the signing of a landmark deal between the two countries, which have been separated by the partitioning of the subcontinent back in 1947.
We've all been wanting to go there. We were going there before the two countries got divided, before this war wasn't there. This was part of Punjab. It was part of Punjab even today. But it's a part of Pakistan, Punjab, and not this side. So it's a humbling experience.
At least 2 people have been killed and others are still missing as bushfires kept on raging in eastern Australia. About 150 homes have been destroyed and several people have been left homeless, and state fire authorities have issued emergency warnings. The fires have been worsened by high winds and dry conditions. This is one of Australia's worst bushfire seasons, and parts of the country are already crippled by a severe drought.
was a catastrophic fire, mate. Come down over the ridge. As you can see, it goes as high as hell. It went right up into the top of the trees. I actually had to take shelter and go because it was right here and lacking it. I sprayed this with fire retardant and hosed and hosed and hosed, drained my dams, and I just hung here for the majority of the whole night.
And finally, in South Africa, South Sudan's President Salva Kiir and his rival Riek Machar have agreed to push back the date for the formation of a national unity government. That decision follows a long meeting between the rivals in Uganda. Uganda's President Yoweri Museveni, who acted as a mediator, said the two agreed to delay by 100 days to allow them to resolve contentious issues, including the composition of the army. The two former close allies fell out in 2013 after Kiir accused his then Vice President Machar of plotting a coup. This triggered a 5-year civil war that has claimed more than 300,000 lives. And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, you can find them on our website at telestorenglish.net. And also join us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Until next time.